The sky above Erivos had never looked like this before. A dim orange haze clung to the horizon, and clouds twisted into jagged, unnatural shapes. The wind carried a scent of iron and smoke, as though the world itself were wounded. Villagers in the distant valleys whispered of omens, closing their doors early and lighting their hearths, afraid to look too long at the sky. At the edge of the ash-scarred plains, a strange rumble shook the ground. It was low at first, almost like the heartbeat of the earth, then it grew louder, a roaring sound that made birds flee in a flurry. And then they came. The Deathworlders arrived. They did not arrive with banners or flags. They did not ride in great columns or parade through the lands. They fell from the sky, descending in silent, terrifying grace, their armor black as night and etched with symbols that no human tongue could speak. Each warrior carried weapons of unknown metal, curved and sharp, yet glimmering faintly as if they absorbed the dying light around them. Among them, Cale Varen stepped forward first. His hair was silvered at the tips, his eyes a pale gray that seemed to pierce through the smoke and ash. His armor bore deep scratches and marks of old battles, a testament to a life spent in conflict. He walked with measured steps, careful not to betray fear, though his gaze betrayed a heart weighted with grief. Behind him came Rhea, moving like a shadow woven from moonlight. She was human in appearance, yet there was something otherworldly about her, something that made the villagers' whispers grow louder. Her skin seemed to shimmer faintly, and her eyes held memories she herself had forgotten. She was bound to an ancient curse, one that slowly devoured her past, leaving only fragments of who she once had been. The villagers had heard the stories of the Deathworlders for generations. Legends spoke of cursed warriors who came from far beyond the stars, of lands where only the strongest survived. But seeing them descend was different, real, terrifying. In the capital city, atop the cliffs that overlooked the vast ashlands, Queen Seraphine watched from her tower. Her silver hair framed her face like a crown of light against the darkening sky. She had ruled Erivos for 20 years, through famine, plague, and endless wars. She had seen invaders before, but nothing like this. Her advisors whispered anxiously, but Seraphine said nothing. She only felt a pull, deep and unsettling, drawing her toward the warriors she did not yet know. "They are coming," she said softly to herself, her fingers brushing over the cold stone of the balcony. "And I do not know if I should welcome them or fear them." He did not speak to Rhea, for words were unnecessary. They had learned long ago that silence often carried more meaning than speech. Yet Rhea sensed it too, the weight of the world pressing down upon them, the fragile lives depending on what they might decide. She felt a tug toward the city, toward the woman who ruled it, as though fate itself had entwined their paths. As night fell, the first fires lit the city's walls. The villagers gathered, unsure whether to flee or pray. Queen Seraphine descended from her tower, clad in robes of deep indigo, embroidered with silver threads that caught the dying light. Her steps were steady, but her heart raced. She had faced sorcery, betrayal, and death itself, but this was unknown. Cale approached the city gates with his warriors in formation behind him. The guards raised their spears, unsure whether these figures were enemies or allies. Seraphine stepped forward, her voice calm yet commanding. "I am Queen Seraphine of Erivos," she announced, her gaze fixed on the leader before her. "State your purpose, strangers." Deathworlders were spoken of in myths, but never in earnest conversation. Their arrival had been whispered like a warning in bedtime stories, and yet here they were, standing before them, speaking of salvation in a world riddled with ruin. Seraphine's mind raced. Could she trust them? Could she allow strangers, warriors of legend, feared across countless worlds, to walk her city streets freely? And yet when she looked at Cale, she saw not just a warrior, but a man haunted by loss, a man who bore the weight of choices too heavy to speak aloud. Rhea, standing slightly behind Cale, looked at Seraphine with eyes that seemed to search her very soul. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of sorrow, of longing, of a connection that neither could yet define. The city gates opened. Seraphine made her decision. "You will stay," she said, "but under my watch, any harm to my people, and you will answer to me." That night, the city seemed to hold its breath. Fires glowed against the darkened sky, casting long, trembling shadows across the cobblestones. Villagers whispered in corners, afraid to sleep, afraid to hope. But at the palace, Seraphine moved quietly through her halls, thinking of the warriors who had appeared from the sky. Rhea wandered the palace gardens, her fingertips brushing against the petals of strange, night-blooming flowers. Memories flickered like broken stars in her mind. She remembered laughter, warmth, and light, and then felt it slip away. The curse that bound her whispered in her ear, a soft and constant reminder of what she had lost. Kale stood atop the city walls, looking out over the plains where smoke rose from distant villages. His heart ached, not for himself, but for the people who would suffer if the shadows beneath the earth were unleashed. He clenched his fists, feeling the familiar weight of destiny pressing against his ribs. He was not meant to be a savior. He was meant to be a survivor. And yet fate had other plans. A sound echoed from the ashlands, a low, rumbling growl that seemed to shake the stones beneath their feet. Kale's eyes narrowed. Rhea stiffened. Even from the walls, Seraphine felt it, a tremor in the air, a warning carried on the wind. The Deathworlders were not alone. Something ancient, something hungry, stirred beneath the land. Seraphine turned to Kale. "What is it?" she asked, though she already feared the answer. Kale did not respond immediately. He only shook his head slightly. "We are not yet ready," he said, "but soon it will find us." She glanced at the Deathworlders, strangers, warriors, haunted and mysterious, and felt both fear and an unexplainable pull toward them. Perhaps they were her salvation. Perhaps they were her doom. And then, as night deepened and the fires cast long, wavering shadows across the walls, a message appeared on the stone threshold of the palace. It was written in dark, glistening ink, as though painted in blood, yet the words glowed faintly with an otherworldly light. "The world will end when they remember their names." Somewhere deep beneath the ashlands, something awakened. And in the city of Erivos, under the shadow of ancient towers, destiny had already begun to stir. The shrouded arrival was only the beginning. The sun rose pale over Erivos, painting the ashlands in shades of gray and gold. Smoke still curled from distant ruins where villages had been burned or abandoned. The city walls held firm, but a tension hung in the air, as if the land itself held its breath, waiting for the events to come. Queen Seraphine walked the outer battlements, her hands clasped behind her back. Kale Varen and his Deathworlders had spent the night in silent observation, stationed along the cliffs that overlooked the plains. The people of Erivos whispered as they passed, curious and fearful, casting sideways glances at the strange, armored warriors who moved with uncanny precision. "The Deathworlders have not eaten nor drunk," one guard murmured nervously. "Is that normal?" Her mind was already racing. These warriors were powerful beyond measure, yet their presence brought a weight she could not name. She had seen warriors of legend before, yet none carried the air of destiny like Kale Varen did. Kale stepped forward, his gaze sweeping the horizon. "Queen Seraphine," he said, his voice low but firm. "We have come for a purpose greater than allegiance. Your city, your people, they are threatened by forces that have existed longer than time itself. We can stop them, but we need your cooperation. The enemy waits beneath the soil. They will strike without warning, and when they do, only those who stand ready will survive." "You feel it too, don't you?" Rhea asked softly, her voice carrying like a melody that was both comforting and sad. "The tremors beneath the earth, the whispers in the dark, something comes and it does not sleep. I am afraid of the truth that cannot be denied." She thought of her advisors who would insist on caution, on distrust, and yet looking at the Deathworlders, she felt a sense of inevitability. Perhaps they had come for a reason beyond her understanding. Perhaps the world demanded their presence. "Very well," she said finally. "We will form a covenant. You may stay, but under my watch. Any harm to my people and you answer to me." "Swear it." Rhea wandered among the night-blooming flowers, her fingers brushing over the petals that glimmered faintly under the moonlight. Memories flickered at the edges of her mind. Faces she once knew, laughter long forgotten, warmth lost to the passage of time. The curse that bound her whispered constantly, a reminder of what she had lost. Seraphine walked among the flowers as well, drawn to the garden by an unseen force. She found Rhea there, her eyes reflecting the moonlight, her expression a mixture of sorrow and curiosity. "You seem familiar," Seraphine said softly, uncertain why she felt that way. Rhea's lips curved into a faint smile, sad and wistful. "Perhaps I am. Or perhaps it is only the world remembering what it once was." Meanwhile, Kale stood atop the city walls, scanning the distant plains. Smoke rose from burned villages, and the ground trembled faintly beneath his feet. He had faced many enemies, yet something about this land unsettled him. The forces that stirred beneath Erivos were ancient, cunning, and relentless. "We cannot wait," he muttered to himself. "They will strike soon, and we must be ready." She placed a hand on his arm, a gesture of reassurance, though he did not turn to meet her gaze. For a moment, the weight of the world seemed lighter, shared between two warriors bound by fate and the knowledge of impending doom. The following day, preparations began in earnest. The queen ordered her soldiers to fortify the walls, to sharpen their weapons, and to train under the guidance of the Deathworlders. Kale moved among them with quiet authority, showing the humans techniques that combined strength and cunning, endurance and speed. The villagers watched in awe and fear. These warriors were unlike any they had seen. They moved with precision, their movements fluid yet deadly, as if every gesture carried meaning beyond mere combat. Rhea remained at the palace, studying the ancient texts and relics that whispered of magic long forgotten. She traced her fingers over the pages, feeling a connection to the power that had cursed her and to the forces that now threatened Erivos. She sensed that her fate was tied not just to Kale, but to the queen and the city itself. Late that night, the queen summoned Kale to her private chamber. The room was dim, lit by flickering candles that cast long shadows on the walls. Seraphine stood by the window, looking out over the city she had vowed to protect. "Kale," she said, her voice steady despite the unease in her chest. "I need to know everything. What exactly are we facing?" "They have been waiting for a chance to rise, and Erivos, your people, they are vulnerable. And we may not all survive. Then we begin at first light. Rest well, Queen Seraphine. The hours ahead will test every fiber of your strength." The curse that had long haunted her whispered urgently, warning her of what was to come. Seraphine appeared beside her again, drawn as if by instinct. "Do you fear it?" she asked, her voice quiet. Rhea shook her head, though her lips trembled. "Fear is only a tool," she said softly. "We cannot let it control us. We must be ready even if the shadows rise against us." From deep beneath the ashlands, something moved, slow, deliberate, and full of ancient hunger. Eyes unseen by human vision watched the city walls, waited for the right moment, and whispered secrets older than the stars. The Deathworlders stood ready, warriors of legend and curse, their presence a shield against the coming darkness. But even they could not see everything. Even they did not yet understand the full scope of the threat. And as the night deepened, a single thought echoed in every heart, queen, warrior, and cursed exile alike. The world they knew was about to change forever. Hook ending Part 2. Rhea gasped, clutching her chest. It remembers us," she whispered, "and it knows our names." The city of Erivos had never been so still. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, carrying the faint scent of smoke and ash. The villagers stayed close to their homes, peeking through windows and whispering prayers. They had seen the Deathworlders train, watched their strange, precise movements, and now they waited with a mixture of fear and hope. At the edge of the ashlands, Kale Varin stood with his warriors. Their black armor glinted faintly under the pale moonlight, weapons ready, hearts hardened for the battle they knew was coming. Kale's gaze swept the horizon, noting the tremors in the ground, the faint shifting of shadows that moved with unnatural purpose. "They are near," he said quietly. "Closer than before, prepare yourselves." She traced the edges of her hands along the ancient markings on her armor, feeling the faint hum of power that still lingered from her curse. Though the curse had stolen much of her memory, it had left her with instincts, senses, and strength she had yet to fully understand. Kale turned to her. "Do you feel it too?" "And it will not wait." She stopped at the window overlooking the ashlands, her silver hair catching the faint light of the rising moon. The tremors had grown stronger, and she could sense the movements beneath the ground, the hidden forces preparing to strike. She drew a deep breath, trying to calm the unease that gnawed at her chest. A soft voice called from the doorway. "Your Majesty." Somehow she trusted Rhea in a way she had never trusted anyone before. The first wave came without warning. Shadows rose from the ashlands like a dark tide, moving swiftly, their forms almost humanoid but twisted, alien, and terrifying. The villagers screamed and ran, but the soldiers and Deathworlders held their positions, shields and weapons ready. Kale's voice rang out. "Hold the line. Remember your training, do not falter." She traced glowing sigils in the air, forming barriers that slowed the advance of the shadows. Each motion cost her, draining strength she did not know she had, but she pressed on, determined to protect the people and the city she had grown to care for. Amidst the chaos, Seraphine remained at the command center, her mind racing with strategies and contingencies. She gave orders with clarity and authority, coordinating soldiers and Deathworlders alike. Her heart pounded as she watched the battle unfold, knowing that the outcome would determine the survival of her city. In a moment of brief calm, Seraphine noticed a figure among the shadows. a twisted, dark creature moving with unnatural speed, heading straight toward her command center. Panic surged in her chest, but before she could react, Rhea stepped forward, her hands glowing with silver light. She raised a barrier just in time, stopping the creature in its tracks. Seraphine's eyes widened. "Rhea," she called. Rhea turned toward her, eyes shining. "You must focus on your people," she said. "I will handle this." Kale's movements were deadly and calculated, yet his mind was elsewhere, drawn to the faint traces of pain and longing in Rhea's eyes. He had always been a warrior focused on survival, yet now he felt a pull toward her, a desire to protect not just the city, but the woman herself. During a brief lull, Kale approached Rhea as she tended to the defenses. The moonlight reflected off her hair, and he could see the exhaustion etched on her face. "You cannot do this alone," he said quietly, his voice carrying concern he rarely allowed himself to show. Rhea shook her head. "I can, but I will not if you are here. We are stronger together. Whatever comes, we stand as one." Its form was a blur of darkness, eyes glowing like molten fire. It moved with intelligence, seeking the heart of the city and the Deathworlders who defended it. Kale's jaw tightened. "That is the true threat," he muttered. "Focus. We cannot let it breach the walls." The air shimmered with silver light as her power pushed against the dark force, slowing its advance. She could feel the strain, her curse reacting to the creature's presence, warning her of its immense strength. Seraphine joined them at the walls, her presence steadying the soldiers. "Do not falter," she shouted. "We hold together. We protect our city, or we fall together." Rhea sensed Kale's struggle and stepped forward. "Together," she said, and their powers combined, his skill and strength, her curse and magic creating a force that pushed back the darkness. The creature roared, a sound that shook the walls and rattled the stones, but it faltered, retreating temporarily into the shadows. Seraphine watched, heart pounding, as Kale and Rhea fought side by side. She could see the connection between them, unspoken yet undeniable. They were not just warriors, they were bound by shared purpose and perhaps something more. A bond forged in the fires of battle in the face of overwhelming darkness. When the battle ended, the first rays of dawn broke over the ashlands. Smoke curled from the horizon, and the city walls bore the marks of the fight. Soldiers and villagers alike emerged cautiously, looking at the devastation and the heroes who had defended them. Kale and Rhea stood together on the walls, surveying the aftermath. Their bodies were exhausted, their minds weary, but their hearts carried a quiet triumph. The city had survived, and though the enemy had retreated, they knew it would return. Seraphine approached them, her expression a mixture of pride and something softer, admiration, gratitude, and a growing respect for the two warriors who had risked everything. "You both saved my city," she said, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "And I cannot thank you enough." And for hope. Something ancient and powerful was awakening, drawn to the city and the Deathworlders who had defied it. Rhea placed a hand on the walls, sensing the movement beneath the ground. "It will return," she said quietly, "and next time it will not wait for us to be ready. Whatever comes, we face it together." She felt the weight of leadership, the pull of destiny, and the quiet stirring of something unexpected, trust, hope, and perhaps the first spark of connection with those who had come from the skies to save them. The first light of dawn broke across the ashlands, painting the sky with streaks of pink and gold. The city of Erivos lay in quiet tension, its walls scarred but standing. Smoke still drifted from distant ruins, and the scent of ash clung to the air. But the tremors beneath the ground had grown stronger, and every heartbeat of the city echoed with the knowledge that the enemy was near. Kale Varen stood atop the city walls, his black armor glinting faintly in the morning sun. His eyes scanned the horizon, and his jaw tightened. The shadows that had retreated the night before were returning, larger, more relentless, and filled with a hunger that no sword could satiate alone. Rhea stood beside him, her silver glow shimmering faintly in the dawn light. She had spent the night strengthening her wards, weaving the remnants of her curse into protective sigils that would shield the city from the worst of the attack. Yet she could feel the pull of the enemy, deep and ancient, calling to her as though it knew her secret, as though it remembered her past. Seraphine approached them, her robes flowing in the morning breeze. The weight of the crown pressed on her shoulders, but she carried herself with the strength that had earned the loyalty of her people. She glanced at Kale and Rhea, seeing in them not just allies, but the protectors of the city, and perhaps the keepers of her own fragile hope. "The tremors are growing," Kale said, his voice low and measured. "They will strike soon. We have little time." Whatever comes, Erivo stands or it falls as one. The shadows coalesced into forms of unimaginable size and strength, their eyes glowing like molten fire. The Deathworlders moved into position, their blades ready, their movements precise, and their hearts steady despite the terror before them. Kale led the first charge, his sword striking with deadly precision, cutting through the darkness. Rhea's magic flared in tandem with his strikes, protective wards and radiant sigils pushing back the creatures, slowing their advance. The city walls shook as the clash of power echoed through the streets. Seraphine moved among her soldiers, her voice rising above the chaos. "Hold the line! Protect the people!" "Stand together!" Her words carried not just authority but hope, grounding those who fought beside her. The battle raged for hours. Shadows fell, soldiers rose, and the Deathworlders fought with unrelenting precision. Kale and Rhea moved as one, their connection deepening in the heat of combat, each anticipating the other's movements, each protecting the other without words. At the heart of the battle, the largest shadow emerged, towering over the rest, its form shifting and writhing. Its gaze fell upon the city and then upon Seraphine. Kale recognized it instantly, the creature that had orchestrated the previous attacks, the intelligence behind the shadows. It was a being of ancient hunger and dark purpose, one that sought the moonlit relic the queen had sworn to protect. Kale stepped forward, drawing the creature's attention. "Go!" he shouted to Seraphine. "We will hold it here." Together they struck with power and precision, but the enemy was relentless, shrugging off attacks that would fell ordinary warriors. Seraphine watched, her heart pounding. She had trusted them, relied on them, and now she realized the full extent of their courage. Kale and Rhea fought not just for survival, but for something greater, the life of the city, the people she had sworn to protect, and perhaps even for her. As the battle reached its peak, the moonlit relic glimmered atop the palace tower. Seraphine knew its power could turn the tide, but using it came with risk. It demanded a vessel, a sacrifice, and she felt the weight of destiny pressing down upon her. She glanced at Kale, whose eyes met hers with unwavering resolve. "I will not let you face this alone," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. Rhea's gaze shifted between them, sensing the choice that must be made. She understood the relic's power, the curse it carried, and the danger it posed to Seraphine. Her heart ached, torn between protecting the queen and guarding the fragile hope that had begun to bloom between them all. With a deep breath, Seraphine stepped forward, placing her hands upon the relic. A brilliant light erupted, washing over the city, the battlefield, and the shadows below. The enemy shrieked and recoiled, its forms dissolving into the ashlands from which they had emerged. But the relic's power was not without cost. The light reached Rhea as well, and she felt the curse within her flare, threatening to consume her entirely. She gritted her teeth, focusing every ounce of strength she had left, channeling the power into protective wards that shielded both the city and the queen. Kale moved to her side, lending his strength, his presence steadying her as the relic's power surged through them all. Together, they contained the force, their combined will turning what could have been destruction into salvation. When the light finally faded, the city stood, battered but alive. The shadows had retreated and the ashlands were silent once more. Kale and Rhea stood together, breathing heavily, their eyes meeting in a shared understanding of what they had endured. Seraphine approached, her robes singed but her spirit unbroken. She placed a hand on Kale's arm, then on Rhea's. "We survived," she said softly. "Because of you, because of all of us." The three of them stood on the walls, watching the sunrise, knowing that Erivos had survived its darkest hour. But the memories of battle, the wounds of war, and the lessons of sacrifice would remain with them forever. In the days that followed, the city rebuilt. Soldiers trained under the guidance of the Deathworlders, learning new skills and techniques. Villagers returned to their homes, cautiously hopeful that peace had returned, if only for a while. Rhea wandered the palace gardens, her eyes clear and her heart lighter. The curse that had haunted her for so long had been tempered by the relic's power, leaving her with freedom she had not known in centuries. She felt a quiet connection to both Kale and Seraphine, a bond that had grown through shared trials and victories. Seraphine stood beside her, sharing in the calm after the storm. The queen felt the weight of her responsibilities, but also the warmth of trust and friendship, and perhaps in time something more. Kale watched them both from the walls, a rare smile touching his lips. The Deathworlders had come to Erivos as strangers, legends feared across countless worlds, yet they had found purpose, connection, and perhaps even hope in this city of ash and stone. The moonlit relic rested atop the palace tower, its glow faint but steady, a reminder of the power that had saved the city and the sacrifices made to wield it. The air was still, and for the first time in many years, Erivos breathed freely, its people safe under the protection of the Queen and the Deathworlders. And as the sun climbed higher in the sky, Kale, Rhea, and Seraphine stood together, bound by destiny, courage, and the quiet stirrings of hearts that had endured darkness and found light. Final hook ending. Then let us write the world anew, together.